Welcome back to the vlog. We're here in Sacramento, California, playing at Capital Casino. It's my favorite place to play. Buying for the 1-3 game for $500, and we got a lot of good hands to go over today. After about 20 minutes of play, we looked down at pocket kings in the cutoff. There was an open for $15. I put in a raise to 40. I was going to do it for 45, but I dropped a chip. Anyway, it gets folded back around to the initial opener who puts in the quick call. And just the two of us are going to go see a flop with $84 in the center. Flop comes out above average. King 8 deuce with 2 diamonds. We got top set. He checks it over. I'm going to c-bet small here with my entire range, so I make it 20. He puts in the quick call. Turn card comes as the ace of diamonds. Not my favorite. The flush comes in. I do not have the king of diamonds. He checks again. I'm going to go ahead and continue for $50, and he quickly releases his hand, flashing that he had a pair of deuces. Haven't had much to play for the last 40 minutes. Finally, I get the free play in my big blind with 9-8 offsuit. And 3 players are headed to a flop with a whole $10 whole in the center. Yes, not a very big pot, but I only got 9-8. Flop comes out Jack 10-6 with 2 clubs. Okay flop for my hand, but if anyone puts in a lot of action, I'm just going to fold this. Let's check to the last player who bets $10. And for $10, I'm going to go ahead and speculate. If you bet more than that, I was just going to fold. Looking for a good turn card, and that's exactly what we get when it comes a 7 of spades. I check it over to him, thinking he will continue with all his jacks and some of his draws. He bets out for $30 this time. And I think it's time to go ahead and put in a raise. There's a lot of draws out there, and there's a lot of hands I can get value from, especially if they have a jack. So I make it 110. My opponent now goes into the tank. He looks like he's trying to figure out the pot odds. So I'm thinking he has some sort of draw. He could have a flush draw, could have a straight draw, could have a combo draw. But it seems like he has more of a draw than a made hand. And after some long, hard thinking, he decides to let it go. He later told me that he had king-queen. All right, the action's starting to pick up. There is a $10 straddle on this hand. One player limps in for the $10. I look down at 2 jacks from the hijack, definitely worth a raise. I make it 40. I get a call from the player on my left. One at the end of the table. And then the initial straddler and the initial limper. So we're going to go up 5 ways to this flop with $201 in the center. Flop comes out 7-7 deuce. So if we're playing the 7 deuce game, I might be in trouble. But here I'm only worried about someone having a 7. I think I need to protect my hand from overcards that might come on the turn, like an ace, king, or queen. So when it gets checked to me, I'm going to go ahead and put in about a 40% pot bet. So I make it $80. Just hoping to price out all those speculative overcards and get value from all those little pocket pairs that might have seen the flop and can't get rid of their hands with that kind of board. First 2 players fold. The straddler ends up deciding to put in a check raise. He makes it $180. Of course, he is the most likely to have a 7 in his hand since he was basically a blind. Next player folds, so we're heads up. And he's very capable of making moves. And I just think that he doesn't have it this time. So I'm going to put in the call, let him keep all his bluffs in his range. If he fires off on the turn, I'm just going to snap call him. 6 of diamonds comes, relative blank. He goes all in. I snap call. We get to see a river card, which is a jack. Oh, well, I made the nut full house, so I'm not really worried about anything. He doesn't want to show his hand. He says that he missed and just ends up mucking it. So didn't need the extra help, but it's always nice when you make a full house. All right, we pick up another decent hand. Here we have pocket 10s under the gun. Open for a raise to $15. Get call from the player on my left. We also get call from the player on the button, the small blind, and the big blind. So we're going to go 5 ways to this flop. And what a beautiful flop it is. We've been hitting everything today. It comes out 10-5 deuce rainbow. Beautiful flop for pocket 10s, of course. The only problem is it might be too good for pocket tens. Like, what am I going to get action from? Someone with a 5? Someone with a deuce? Maybe a pocket pair? So I'm going to bet small. I lead out for $30. Hoping to get some action from a player. Maybe someone possibly making a move on such a dry, small flop. I do get a call from the player on the button. He can have a wide range here, and also one from the big blind. All right, we got a really strong hand. Hopefully someone will make something good and decide to pay us off. Turn card comes is a deuce of diamonds. The player in the big blind now tanks forever and then decides to check it. I decide to go ahead and check this since I have the board locked up, and I thought maybe the player on the button might make a move on the pot. Unfortunately, he checks it back, so now I'm only hoping that someone will bluff at it on the river when the 4 diamonds comes. It'd be nice if they actually made something. Maybe big bet. He bets $15. Really small bet. He either has a big hand and he wants me to raise and snap me off, or he has absolutely nothing. I decided to go for a big raise. The other play would be just to call and hope the person on the button will make a move, but he had nothing. He quickly folded. Player to my right opens for a small raise to $6. I got Queen Jack suited in the cutoff. I'm just going to make it 20. Probably should have made it 25, but that is what it is. Player in the button decides to put in a call for the $20. The 2 blinds fold out, and the initial opener puts in the call. So we go 3 ways to this flop with 64 in the center. Flop comes out ace, queen, 9. There's no hearts, but there are 2 spades out there. First player checks. I don't really love it, but I'm going to go ahead and c-bet this thing. I do have second pair with a decent kicker. Player behind me now looks like he wants to raise, and then he just decides to put in the call. He could have something like an ace. Maybe he has some sort of draw like a straight draw or flush draw. Turn card comes as a queen of diamonds. I really should be betting this thing. 2 flush draws on board. I just made my hand. But I decided to get a little tricky and check it back. He quickly checks behind me. I'm hoping that he checked a weak ace behind me, and now that maybe the 10 came, he can pay off a little bit. So I put in a bet for $75. He quickly folds, says he had a flush draw, so I lost out on value on that turn. Well, that was basically the end of day 1, but I came back on day 2, sat at the same table in basically the same seat. First hand I get is ace jack offsuit from the big blind. Player open for 20. It's someone I want to give some action to, so I decided to put in the call. Flop comes queen jack 5 with 2 diamonds. I don't have a diamond in my hand, which makes it more likely that he has a possible flush draw with an ace of diamonds. This is probably just a fold, but again, I want to try to give him some action. I put in the call. Turn card comes as a blank deuce of hearts. I check it over to him again. I figured he would slow down with a lot of his hands, but he keeps on firing, this time for $60. He's saying he has a queen or better. I have a hard time believing that. I got blockers to queen jack and ace queen. River card comes as a 6 of spades. I check again. I figured he would check back all his hands unless it's ace queen or better. And he decides to bet 110. There are a lot of draws that he could have had and missed. I don't think he would bet, say, just a regular queen. It has to be like ace queen or better. It makes me feel like maybe he has ace king of diamonds. I hope he doesn't have ace queen of diamonds. If he has ace queen, I'm blocking one of those. If he has 2 pair like queen jack, I'm blocking that also. Trying to think, I go, I'm just going to have to look him up. And he shows me pocket king, so that all makes sense. I paid him off. It's not the best way to start off a day, but sometimes you just run into it, and he happened to have it this time. I'm under the gun with king, queen offsuit. Open for a raise of $15, just trying to get some folds and get this down to a decent size number of players. But in Capital Casino here in Sacramento, California, that's just like giving an invitation for someone to come in and play. In fact, I have 5 opponents wanting to play this hand, so we're going to go 6 ways to a flop with a so-so hand out of position. Flop comes King Jack 7 with 2 clubs. I do have the Queen of clubs, but against 5 opponents, I'm going to be a little cautious and decide to check it. It does get checked around, so I think I probably have the best hand. Turn card's a 6 of diamonds, so unless someone had a hand like 7-6, I'm probably still best. I'm going to go ahead and fire for $50, hoping to get action from someone with a weak king or maybe a strong jack, or perhaps some sort of draw. My opponent calls from the low jack. He has a pretty decent sized stack in front of him. Everyone else folds out, so it's just the two of us. River card comes as a 10 of hearts. Not the greatest card in the world. It brings in 8, 9, and some other odd straights or 2-pair type of hands like Jack 10. I decided to lead at him again for 80. He doesn't think long before letting it go. So I didn't play this one great, but we won it. There's a $6 straddle and 2 players limp in front of me. I got 9-10 suited from the cutoff. Definitely a hand I can mix in a few raises here. So I make it $35. Only get called from the player in the small blind. He just lost the previous hand where he got stacked. So he's starting off with about $500. Flop comes out King 7-4 all hearts. Man, I am running hot today. Flopping a flush after putting in a raise. I'm going to go ahead and lead for $25, just trying to get action from anything that he might have. He calls quickly after taking a peek at his cards. Maybe he has some sort of big heart. Turn is a 10 of diamonds. That's good for me. Time to size up a little bit. I make it $75. I want to build a pot big enough so I can get in a all-in shove and have him call me. And I want to keep all this kings in play. So he ends up calling, and we see a bad river card of ace of hearts. Puts a 4 flush up there. He checks over to me. There's no value to be had here. He either has a queen jack or he's not going to be calling any kind of bet. So I just check it back. He says he has nothing, and I show my flush and I take it down. One player limps in. The next player raises to 23. The next player raises to 75, and they have about a $300 stack. I got 2 aces in the big blind. I decided just to call because I want to get the overcall from the player who raised to 23. He has a much larger stack, and I kind of want to go for that. The player who put it in the 3-bet, I'm sure has a big pocket pair like aces, kings, queens, maybe jacks. Flop comes 10 high, all hearts. I look down and make sure I had the ace of hearts. I did. So there's not too much I'm worried about unless they had specifically pocket 10s. It gets checked to the 3-better who puts in all her chips, and it comes out to $221. Something like that. $221. I decided I am going to call, hoping to get an overcall from the other player, but he is obviously not interested in that flop and quickly mucks his hand. He ended up flashing that he had the ace of diamonds in his hand. We get to see a run out, which comes queen of spades and a 5 of clubs. They turn over pocket jacks, and we win, of course, with our aces. Yeah, we are running hot. All right, we got a $6 straddle. Player to my right limps in for 6. I decided to limp for the 6. The player in the straddle has a high, squeezing frequency, you might say. So I expect him to squeeze with all his playable hands and some of his non-playable hands. And again, I want to get and play hands with this person. 2 other players put in the $6, and now it's to the straddler, who announces a raise and adds 50 on top. So he makes it $56. Just what I wanted. Now the question comes, do I want to repop him now or just play in position with a pair of 10s? I decided just to play in position with a pair of 10s. So the other 2 players ended up folding out, and we're going to go off to a flop heads up with 133 in, which comes Jack 10 deuce with 2 spades. Really good flop for my hand, of course. But I didn't even see the flop because my opponent was staring at me and I was staring at him. We're both looking for reactions from each other. And so when he checks it to me without even looking at the flop, I decided I was just going to check it back.
I understand checking blind when you're out of position, but when you're in position, That's when you want to look at the freaking flop. Come on, Doug, you know better than that.
Turn card comes now as a 5 of diamonds. He leads out quickly for $56. I think he would do this with his entire range. Now it's on me. I'm saying to myself, why didn't you look at the freaking flop? You could have bet then, built a nice pot, get him hooked in there, maybe get him stacked, maybe he'll make a play at you. I feel like a complete idiot. Well, now I just have to assess what the board is. Jack 10 suited up there. There's a lot of draws that he could possibly have. A lot of cards that can make him a gut shot to a straight. He might even have a jack. Ace jack perhaps. Willing to pay me off. Maybe an overpair. Who knows? Well, one thing I know for sure is I'm going to have to put in a raise here because I want to build a pot. As for the size of the raise, I decided $200 would be about right. It's really hard to tell when you don't bet the flop because you learn a lot of information when you don't bet or when you bet the flop. And I have none of that, so I'm really guessing in the dark the quality of his hand. He tanks for a very long time. I say probably about 2 or 3 minutes. I'm thinking that he might make a play at me, and then he just decides to let it go. So I really screwed up this hand. I think I should have won a much, much bigger pot than what I ended up winning. And I think I need to look at the flop when I'm in position. Lesson learned. All right, I'm not pleased with myself with the way I played that last hand. Maybe I can make up for it with aces. There's one limper in front of me. I raised to $20. I get a call from the player on my left, the player at the end of the table, the player next to him, and the player next to that one. You know, basically everyone called. We're going to go 6 ways to the flop. And I got aces, not a great position. Flop comes out Jack, Jack 8 with 2 clubs. All right, a flop of Jack, Jack 8 is horrible for pocket aces. Very likely somebody has a jack. Very likely somebody has possibly some sort of straight draw, flush draw, combo draw. There's pocket 8s that could be out there. There's a lot of garbage. And when you're going up against 5 opponents, it's very likely that one of them or 2 of them will have something. So I'm just going to check this. It gets checked to the player at the end of the table who takes a stab for $30. Now, he stabs a lot and could have absolutely nothing. The player I'm worried about is the player next to act after him who called for the $30. Now, he could definitely have a jack. He also could have some sort of draw, either like a 9-10 or a flush draw. But for $30, I got backdoor nut flush draw. I'm going to go ahead and call one more time, see what happens. Turn card comes is a queen of diamonds. Okay, the straights get there. I'm basically going to give this up. I check it. Person at the end of the table checks, and now the last person puts in a bet for $45. All right, this size bet is rather peculiar. And, you know, it's only a quarter size of the pot, a little bit smaller than that. So it either means that he's not really afraid of the straight or the flush draws that are out there, and that he has like a full house, or it means that he has a weakish hand, maybe like say he has queen 10 was calling for a gut shot. Maybe he has a queen high flush draw, and he's just putting in a little teeny feeler bet. He has a very deep stack. He has about 900 starting in his stack. So if he has a really strong hand, if I catch an ace, I can win a big pot. And if he has one of those weaker hands, I'm ahead of him right now. So I call. The other player folds out, and we get a queen of hearts on the river. So now if he had one of those queen high flush draws or a queen 10, he now filled up. Could I bluff him with a big bet representing a queen? Could I get away with it? Possibly, but he has a strong range. A lot of people don't like to fold full houses. So I'm just going to check this back. He checks it back also. And shows Jack 9 offsuit for a full house. I'm not going to bluff into strong ranges. I learned my lesson a long time ago. A few hands later, I pick up ace king of clubs in the small blind. There was 2 limpers. Player on the button raised to 20. With ace king suited, I'm going to make it $75. Out of position, make it a little bit bigger than normal. Big blind now assembles a raise to 175. This is not good. All the other players fold out and it's back to me. What to do, what to do. Well, I guess the first thing you need to know is what kind of range this person will have to make this move. As I've seen him in the past, it's no guarantee of the future, of course, but he probably has a tight range of aces, kings, queens, and ace-king. That's about it. I don't think he's going to be making this move with anything else. I'm representing a very strong hand myself, so that's the range I'm putting him on. Next question is, what kind of equity our hand has against his range? So if we shove all in now and get called, how often are we going to win it? How often are we going to lose it? And how often are we going to tie it? Now, I've done this exercise many times on many different hands with this same outcome. So I actually know the percentages because I've done this before. But for those who haven't, it's always good to get a range calculator and figure these things out. So ace king suited against that range has almost 42% equity. You're going to win 22.6% of the time, and you're going to tie 38% of the time. So it's not that bad if you just go all in. So all in was my first idea. And then I thought, well, you only raised 100 more. Now, if I just call the 100, what kind of equity would I have? Am I getting the right price just to call? And I figured if I just call, I still got 42% equity, but I'm not risking all my chips at that moment. He has about $270, $280 behind. So I know I'm getting a decent price just to call. And if the flop comes good or semi-good, giving me some sort of draw, I'm just going to go with it. So I just put in the call. And we see a flop of 10-9-3. I don't have a backdoor flush draw. I got a weak backdoor straight draw. I check it over to him, and of course he slides all in. Now I know that when I missed my flop, I had about 30% equity. As it turned out, when I ran the calculator, it was actually 28.7. But I figured it was around 30%. And with his $270 bet and my call, am I getting the right price? It's very questionable. And I hate to be calling off when I'm drawing dead in case he has something like aces or kings. That'll be even worse. But against this entire range, 28.7%. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't played well these last couple of hands. I think that I'm just going to end up folding this and moving on to the next. The player later told me that he had ace king of hearts. So not to be results oriented or anything, but no matter what his hand was, I think the decision process comes down to at what point do you go with ace king against an all-in or a potential all-in. So he had 150-ish big blinds to start the hand with. I don't like to go all in with ace king for 150 big blinds personally. 100 big blinds or less, yeah, no doubt I'm getting it in there. When it gets to 150, that's when I start to reconsider. Anything over 200, I rather see a flop with ace king. So this was a tough situation for me. I already had 25 big blinds in when I raised to 75, and when he put in that small raise, it really made me think that he had something better than ace king, because why would he make it so small? Anyway, it was a good play on his part. He got me to fold a chop, as it turned out. Just shoving all in would have been a much easier, and then we got to see a run out. But a lot of times, I think I would have ran into a hand that I didn't want to see. So I'm not bad. I'm not upset about my fold. It was well played by my opponent, and sometimes you just get outplayed. Well, that was my last hand on day 2, but this is day 3. I just threw this in as an extra little bonus hand because it was a really, it was a strange hand. Let's just say that. So the way this went down is that a player limps in for $3. I raise to $20. Got call from the player on the button, the player in the big blind, and of course the original limper. So we're going to go 4 ways to this flop with 81 in, and it comes 10-7 deuce with 2 diamonds and their 10 of spades. It gets checked over to me. I got a backdoor straight draw, a flush draw, and an overcard. So I decided to just take a stab for $50, trying to get everyone to fold out some sort of weaker hand. Big blind likes their hand. They decided to put in the call. And now it's to the player to my right, who has just joined the table a little while ago. And he takes for a while before putting in a raise to $140. All right, he makes it 140. What kind of hand does he have? Well, he could have a set, pocket deuces, pocket sevens, maybe even pocket tens. He could have a 10 with a flush draw, perhaps. Maybe he has 8-9 for an open-ender. Whatever he has, I don't think I can fold. I got way too much equity with a flush draw and a backdoor straight draw, so I'm going to continue. And hopefully the other player in the blind will come along and give me a little bit better pot odds, because I don't have a made hand and I'm not that worried about them. I'm worried about the player to my right. Player at the end of the table does decide to put in the call. All right, once he gets that call in, we got $500 in the center of the pot. And we get to see a turn card of a jack of diamonds. Oh, how beautiful it is. We just made our flush. First player checks. Player to my right now fires in, all in for $225. Of course, this is a no-brainer call. I'm just taking a little time making it look like I have a decision in case the other player wants to put in an overcall. I slide my 225 in, and now it's over to the player in the big blind, who tanks for probably 2 or 3 minutes and finally ends up folding. So after he ends up folding, we get to see a river card looking for a blank, and we get the 8 of spades. Good for us, I believe. My opponent doesn't want to show his hand. He just ends up folding and face down. I'm really puzzled what kind of hand he could have had where he made those bets and all the draws got there and he folds without turning it face up. Interesting. Well, it's been a while since we had a good week, but that's exactly what we had. That first day we ended up winning 860. Day 2, 385. And day 3 we ended up winning $675. All in all, that makes a good week, at least in my book. As you can see from the chart, we're up to like 3,300 for the month and 13 for the year. So things are getting better. We had that long dry spell, but we managed to weather through it, and now we're catching a little bit of a heater. So we ran above average. I didn't play my best today, unfortunately, or these days. Still made some mistakes and could have played some hands better. But we live, we learn. Thanks for joining. I appreciate your support. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do so. We're getting close to that 10K mark of subscribers. So a little subscription there, if you haven't been subscribed, will surely help the channel grow. Until next time, good luck at the tables, and we'll see you back here soon.